Hi, it's been a very long time since I've made a video, so I've kind of forgotten how to function on a camera. I've been very busy the past couple months with university and all that bullshit, so I'm very excited to actually be doing research on something I want to research instead of focusing on a deadline that the university that I am in thousands of dollars of debt to wants me to do. Basically, this video is going to be about fast fashion and the true cost of fast fashion and like all the negatives associated with fast fashion. I just want to address, first of all, it's June, so happy Pride Month if you're straight. No, you're not. Second of all, I need to address that I am a complete hypocrite as much as I like to think that I'm like an ethical consumer or whatever. I work at a fast fashion retailer, and in part of that job I have to like wear the clothes from that company. So I have to like buy it straight from like from the shop, and they prefer that we wear like the newer stuff so then we can like sell it to customers. So as much as I like to think that I don't buy that much, which I don't really, I only really buy something if I know I'm gonna love it, or like secondly, if my boss is like, that looks good on you, and I'm like, well, I gotta make you happy because you're paying me. Also, a couple weeks ago, I went to Typo with a friend and got some notebooks I don't need because I already have like 50 notebooks that I don't need. In my defense, my man, the Notorious Big, I love him. And now I have a notebook with his face on it. I also have some stickers of the Notorious Big. Can't wait to stick them on stuff. Anyway, into the real topic of this video, fast fashion. Again, disclaimer, I am not trying to pretend like I am holier than thou. Like I've stated before, I'm not perfect. I do, as much as like in my personal life, I prefer shopping like secondhand, especially on Depop, because the stuff on there is just nicer than the thrift shops in my area. I understand that in some situations, fast fashion is like the only option to people, and I'm not trying to like discredit that or anything like that. I guess I'm just trying to make people more aware of where their money is going to, and hopefully alternatives, if possible at all. At the very least, just try shopping less. Anyway, enough rambling, into the actual meat of the video. So fast fashion is not only a human rights issue but a feminist issue. If you've watched enough like commentary videos about fast fashion, you've probably heard that being said like a million times. But basically, in the fast fashion industry, majority of garment workers are women. And there are a lot of problems with sexual harassment against women, especially in Bangladeshi and Indian factories. When women in these factories try to unionize, they are threatened by management and then are forced out of their job. Around 80% of the workforce in clothing is made up of women. So again, it's a feminist issue as well as a basic human rights issue. In a lot of these countries where like garments are being made, it's a very like male dominated area, so a lot of the time men are like the main kind of breadwinners and that kind of stuff, and women are kind of seen as inferior. Not that different to our society, let's be real. They also work in very dangerous conditions, working long hours and all surrounded by chemicals and stuff. And I hear arguments all the time of like, well, if it's so dangerous, why don't they just get another job? Poverty. Like that's their only choice really, to be working in these garment factories where they're earning like a few cents an hour and not earning enough to pay for their basic necessities. In these countries as well, job opportunities are very limited, and the textile industry is seen as being less dangerous as other jobs such as stone cutting or being a housemaid, where there is a risk of being harassed by the men in these houses, and those risks are much more dangerous than working in a garment factory, even though those conditions are still very dangerous. The main countries producing clothing overseas are China, Bangladesh, India, Cambodia, and Indonesia. The living wage in Bangladesh, for example, is 85 euros per month, which is still not enough for these predominantly women to provide for themselves and their families if they have families, causing them to work overtime. Brands like to tell customers that workers in these countries are paid minimum wage, and although this is technically true, the minimum wage in those countries doesn't pay for everything that they need. In fact, it only covers like half to about a fifth of what is required to pay for basic necessities such as rent, food, healthcare, and education. Again, especially if they have families and children that they want to get through school. These workers often work 14 to 16-hour days and then are forced into overtime, not specifically by like the big overlords, but just because they want a better chance of being able to survive and pay for living. Workers in these factories breathe in toxic substances with no ventilation. They inhale fiber dust in unsafe buildings where accidents, fires, injuries, and disease are prevalent. A real-life example of this is the collapse of the Rana Plaza in Bangladesh in 2013, where 1,134 garment workers were killed and thousands more were injured. This was caused by unapproved construction and the use of the space as industrial rather than commercial. So these big fast fashion overlords don't really give a shit about people overseas and their well-being, because otherwise this tragedy wouldn't have happened. Forced labor is also unfortunately prevalent in these countries. An example of this is in China with the Muslim, sorry, I'm gonna pronounce this very wrong, like the yoga camps. Like, remember when there was that story going around about how like over 1 million Muslims in China had been put into concentration camps? Well, those people that have been imprisoned have been forced to work in the cotton fields for like a multitude of fast fashion brands. Additionally, the Uzbekistan government forces over 1 million people to leave their jobs so then they can pick cotton again for major brands. Child labor is still prevalent, unfortunately. Hundreds and thousands of young girls work in the textile industry for a small wage to be used as their family dowry in South India. These girls also work in horrific conditions, which is unfortunately not much of a surprise. The treatment of workers during COVID wasn't really great. COVID is still existent, obviously. It's died down a lot in Australia, and I, to be honest, don't really keep up to tabs with what's really going on overseas. I know it's really bad in India, unfortunately, and I would hope that the workers there are being protected, but I should have done my research. I don't really know. Most garment workers are considered to be temporary workers, meaning they have no right to benefits, which left millions of garment workers facing unemployment, hunger, and the ability to provide for themselves when factories shut down due to COVID. When factories were open, there was very little regard for safety for these garment workers. There was limited PPE, very limited social distancing, which both of these things put workers at risk. Workers are sometimes paid per piece instead of per hour, so they are abandoning health and safety measures to speed up their production rate so that then they get paid more so that then they can afford to live. This also happened in the UK, where a factory producing garments for Boohoo was found to be paying workers below minimum wage and not providing masks for workers. LA Apparel, which is an apparel brand, obviously, started making masks for the government, but they had inadequate social distancing practices and didn't translate health precautions in Spanish in their factories, and Spanish is the first language for the majority of the workers, which resulted in 300 COVID cases at the factories and 4 deaths. There are also environmental issues to consider with the production of fast fashion. The fast fashion industry is responsible for 8% of the global climate change impact and it emits 1.2 billion tons of carbon dioxide annually. They are also the second largest water polluter in the world. People are now trying to find more sustainable options when shopping fast fashion because people are learning that materials such as polyester are literally just like plastic and petrol melted together, and they're trying to find better ways of shopping, but consumers are often misled due to marketing misinformation. The main issue is viscose. Like, there's a lot of issues with the other synthetic fibers such as like nylon, polyester, obviously, spandex, and if there's more synthetic fibers, there are issues with them because they are synthetic and man-made and not naturally occurring. But viscose is especially dangerous, and I want to talk about it. So rayon, viscose, both terms are used interchangeably because they're literally the same thing, is seen as being a sustainable option to polyester, which a lot of people have sworn off polyester due to it being derived from petroleum, and it just doesn't feel good on the body, like, at all. It just feels like you're wearing a plastic sheet. Viscose is seen as being a good alternative, but it's still just as harmful, if not more so. Materials are sourced from rainforest, which in higher production leads to deforestation, and then they're broken down into man-made fibers using sodium hydroxide and carbon disulfide, which are turned into a liquid product and then spun into threads through the use of sulfuric acid. These products are made in third world countries such as Bangladesh and China due to the production of rayon being too toxic to comply with the USA's EPA standards. Why are we making it at all if it's too dangerous for the US? You just don't care because it's not in a predominantly white country. Workers in these factories are therefore placed at a high risk of insanity, nerve damage, heart disease, and stroke. This doesn't only affect factory workers, which is bad enough that it's affecting them, but once these chemicals get dumped into the town's water supply, then the entire community can also experience these side effects. By the time that this material gets to us consumers though, it's been washed like multiple times, so those effects aren't prevalent, which is fortunate for us, but unfortunate that a lot of people are placed at risk beforehand. So, you know, fast fashion equals bad. But sustainability is also quite difficult, especially if you're just getting started, if you don't really have access to thrift shops. There's also like size inclusivity issues, which I definitely experience. Unlike the average size, maybe like a size bigger. It's hard enough trying to find stuff like on Depop and everything, but then when I go into an actual store, it's all for like size 8 people, and I've never been a size 8. I understand that there are a lot of issues with sustainability, especially with like sustainable brands producing clothes but aren't very size inclusive, or they don't ship to your country, that kind of thing. So what can we do to, you know, break this cycle? Consumers can break the cycle of the damages done by fast fashion, whether it's in small ways or very large ways. Think about the clothes you already own and whether or not you need new clothes, because if you already have what you need in your wardrobe, then you don't need to buy a new thing, therefore creating a demand for said thing. 60% of all clothes produced aren't even worn, they just get thrown away. So buying clothes secondhand is a fun option, and the clothing is often cheaper as well, unless you're getting scammed on Depop. Consider supporting brands who are pushing slow fashion in ethical factories where workers are being paid what they're worth and have workers' rights. Also encourage fast fashion companies to produce less clothing and pay their workers a livable wage. Not just a minimum wage, but an actual livable wage. I mean, this can be done by emailing companies and all that. I've never done that personally, so I'm again a hypocrite, but it's something I should definitely start doing. Also, in emails, if you are comfortable to do so, ask hard-hitting questions to companies about their practices and whether they are treating their workers ethically or not. Also, just like doing your research. If you don't want to email these people, maybe consider doing like your own research. And if you can't find much information about like the factories and you like the whole cycle of how clothes are being made, then it's probably not very ethical. But if you can find loads of information, then that's definitely a good sign that the company is doing some good. Consider like other ways of shopping, such as secondhand, like I've mentioned, vintage and consignment stores, swapping clothes with friends. Like I've definitely done that, where if clothing doesn't fit me anymore or I just get sick of it, I'll ask my friends if they want it. Also, hiring clothes through companies such as Rent the Runway is a really good idea, because then you only get those clothes for a certain amount of time, usually like a month or so, and you get to try it before you really commit to getting it. Also, when shopping for brand new items, look for sustainable options such as items made from tencel or bamboo. That's all I have to say. This has been fun. This has been a topic I've wanted to talk about for a while, but I feel like everyone has said everything I need to say, so I tried to find different information, and I hope I conveyed that well. Happy Pride Month, bitches, and I will see you when I see you. Take care. Bye.